The new Warzone mode has landed at last. Modern Warfare's hugely anticipated take on the Battle Royale formula surprises in many ways, not least of all being free to play and offering a remarkable 150 players in one gameplay instance. It's quite unlike the Blackout mode of Black Ops 4 last year, of course, which required a copy of the game just to run it. That bar of entry is gone entirely and anyone can parachute right into the Warzone for free. Well, assuming you've got the bandwidth for a 100GB or so install. Existing Modern Warfare owners, by the way, need only download a 20GB update to add the mode to the main menu. No matter which angle you arrive from though, the mode delivers on the technical front. The series' strong signature gunplay combines well with such a giant scale map. And really, seeing the vast scope of the Verdansk map, it shows how developer Infinity Ward's push for an engine overhaul, with LOD optimizations as a big focus, pays off.
There, going.
It's great the team's taken time to get this right. Months on from Modern Warfare's launch, optimizations have been ongoing with Modern Warfare in general, in the form of new modes and engine updates hitting every few weeks. It's always changing, always evolving, and it's honestly been a delight to play because of it. But this Warzone mode is a different beast entirely. It's the combination of a lot of work at a very core engine level to get all consoles and PC rendering the same huge map, for games with crossplay in mind. It's a logistical challenge in networking so many players too. I mean, we saw 100 as the maximum in Blackout last year, and while Warzone's bumped up to 150, there's reported plans to push it even further to 200. It really is this engine being pushed to the furthest extreme. The focus for today then, how does the game run on the four consoles, PS4, Xbox One and the enhanced equivalents? And with the hindsight of seeing Blackout run on each last year with variable results, has Infinity Ward's revamped, optimized engine created a more level playing field in frame rate? Or is there still a big gap in performance and resolutions between base Xbox One and the mighty X that gives one an advantage over the other? Let's dig in and find out. First up, what's included? The new Warzone map is one of the series' largest and, in design terms, achieves it in a similar fashion to Blackout. There's a combination of pre-existing maps from the other multiplayer modes, notably the ground war areas in Verdansk, and also new areas. This means you'll bump into familiar locations like the Karst River Quarry of ground war mode, or the downtown district with its sniper-friendly skyscrapers. Plenty others intertwine with these too, from prisons to hospitals to parks, all fluidly flowing from one into the next. There are a few twists to the Battle Royale formula here, with 3 squad teams as a focus, taking a feather out of Apex Legends' cap. Plus, there's a rather similar approach to installing armor plates, plus a pinging system. Otherwise, business as usual. You drop in and evade a ring of toxic gas until all players are pushed to the center for a tense face-off. What you're seeing here is Xbox One X footage targeting 4K. Still, it speaks to the engine's adaptability that even base Xbox One renders much the same geometry and fine detailing at range. There are very slight differences in LODs between X and Pro, for example, but in my testing it's not been a major sticking point. In the interest of fair play online, map visibility does, logically, have to have a broad common ground. It means, in comparison, resolution is the biggest point that divides the consoles up. So to start with the best, Xbox One X targets the full 3840 by 2160, but with a dynamic resolution method in place that drops only the horizontal axis, the lowest point being around 1920 by 2160. Combined with temporal reconstruction, the effect is still wonderfully sharp though on a 4K set. In comparison with PS4 Pro, which we've achieved here by setting up each console to spectator mode, there is a clearer image on X all round. Again, there are very small differences in foliage draw for small plants and occasional geometry, but otherwise there's very little in this. Resolution wise, PS4 Pro does take a step down though, in targeting around 2716 by 1528, though again it adjusts the horizontal axis based on load. Cross-platform comparisons like this show very few other differences. The post pipeline is the same, right down to the motion blur technique, and it's very similar to the setup of the regular multiplayer modes otherwise. That divide between a 4K target on X and the 1528p on Pro is really what sets these two apart. Looking to the base consoles next, we're in familiar territory again. Base PS4, a dynamic 1920 by 1080, with drops to a halved horizontal res of 960 by 1080. On the other hand, there's base Xbox One, with what appears to be a 900p target, though with some frames showing drops under that. It's worth stressing there's a lot going on behind the scenes though. The pixel count can change wildly from frame to frame, but the perceptible result on base Xbox One is a world away from the rest. As with Blackout last year, it's this drop off in visibility, especially at range, that can sadly be the reason you miss an enemy far away. It's just less defined, and you're at a real disadvantage when pitted against Pro, X, and especially PC players. Having a resolution in flux is only one part of Infinity Ward's trick to getting its engine to scale to platforms with different GPU specs. On top of that, the team's streaming system forms a major part of what makes this engine so flexible. Since launch, CPU optimizations across the game have laid the groundwork for Warzone, especially when it comes to its LOD system. We'll be taking a deeper dive into Modern Warfare's tech as it stands today, but here's a snippet of how this works, with debug footage. It's worth stressing this is purely meant for visualization purposes, and not representative of in-game performance. Even so, it gives a great snapshot of how the map streaming of Warzone is possible. So, to explain, each tile on the left side represents where the geometry is visible to the player and also the LOD quality it's using from range. It clearly defines the workload for the CPU into chunks, prioritised based on what's necessary from the player's point of view, their proximity, highlighted by the circle, and whether the asset is loaded in yet. It's fascinating stuff. This isn't simply a fix for Warzone either though. There are no different code paths or executables based on mode. All of the work put into getting Warzone running here trickles straight down to the other multiplayer staples as a result, even 1v1 and Ground War. Everything belongs to the same engine framework, and it's really a sign that it's robust engine design that's making it possible. Everything you see in the multiplayer runs to this same logic.
Moving up. Cancel that.
Even with these smart engine choices, there's a clear pecking order for performance. The first one we'll kick off with is the frontrunner, PS4 Pro. Despite a lower resolution than X, it's simply the smoothest performer all round in Warzone, just like the other multiplayer modes. VSync is fully engaged, true of the base console as well, and the game just seems to tick along with only drops into the mid 50 FPS region at worst. At least based on testing so far, this station segment is a challenge for the other platforms, a highly geometrically dense area with lots of weapon drops strewn about. And yet, Pro does seem to just blitz through without too much trouble. From the parachute drop to the final moments as the toxic gas closes in, you're getting the smoothest turnout here on console. Next up is Xbox One X. Mainly this is distinguishable for using adaptive VSync. Frame rates can drop, but tearing is introduced to minimize the judder of a full frame being duplicated. So image quality is affected, but in general it does hold to 60 FPS more often than not. The regularity of drops is more common than PS4 Pro, which you can see with this station segment hitting the mid 50s. Even so, it's pushing a visibly higher resolution, so the trade-off here is pretty reasonable. I'd recommend Sony's enhanced machine overall, but X has a solid delivery of the game. 50 to 60 FPS in stress points then, the downtown spots especially, but most interlinking areas will fly by at the full 60 Hz.
Gas is inbound. Marking new safe zone.
It's the base machines that inevitably struggle by comparison. The standard PS4 is really put to task from the initial drop down to the station area, and you get a full range of 45 to 60 FPS depending, and that's without any real action on screen. Simply crawling through the carriages puts it all the way down there. That being said, and as with all Battle Royale games, the more gameplay is pushed to a small space and the fewer opponents left, the easier the task becomes for PS4. Whittling it down to 12 players or so, we're basically at 60 FPS most of the time here, which is great. It's that early phase that's a particular problem for PS4 then, and thankfully being armed with VSync means image quality is consistently better than base Xbox One.
New safe zone.
Of course, base Xbox One trails the pack. Comparisons aren't exact, but this early stage drop to the station gets us to an all-time low of 40 FPS. Add in the screen tearing plus the overall lower resolution, and it's simply the least appealing way to play. It's impressive we've got 150 players in such an expansive map running on the machine, but really, all things considered, you're battling against an extremely variable level of performance here. It goes to lower points too, into the 30 FPS range at one point, though in fairness it does get a similar boost to PS4 towards the later stages of a game. It's telling that the only part hitting a solid 60 FPS here is the Gulag battles, a 1v1 arena where you fight for your right for another chance in the game. For the actual game in the open battlefield, from best to worst, it's Pro, X, PS4 and then base Xbox One. We should have seen it coming based on the ground war mode performance, but Warzone is clearly geared towards the enhanced machines. It is technically polished though, given the right hardware, and despite some glitches, notably an exploit at launch involving teammates reviving each other in the gas in perpetuity to win, it's really a robustly built mode. It's also telling that the setup for resolution and performance isn't far removed from the rest of the game. There's a consistency to the way the engine works that bears out in these results overall. But that's all I have today for this quick look at Warzone. If you did find this summary useful or insightful in any way, please let me know by liking or subscribing, and don't forget to hit the bell to get notifications as any new video lands. To get a high quality version of this video, check out our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net, and to get in touch with me or the team directly, as always, just use Twitter. But from me for now, thanks for watching.